Hello, my name is Daniel Hodab, and we are having a special guest today who will be leading our study group for Law of One Europe Telegram channel, and this is Gabriel Lugo. Welcome, Gabriel.
Thank you, Daniel and Tad and everybody else who's here. Like I said, and I'll probably say it a couple of times for the next couple of weeks, thank you for inviting me and making me part of this beautiful group. Um, uh, I'm delighted to start, this project that we talked about. And I already made my notes, so I have some notes that I want to share today in terms of introduction of myself and also how I see the law of one, because I feel that it's fair that you guys know the way I structure in my mind, so it makes sense when I go through the sessions, always with the caveat that this is just my interpretation that I feel, most of us share because it's a love for the material in terms of how it helps us to live this life, because I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, I'm excited to share those notes and, then actually get to know a little bit more about how everybody feels in terms of learning the material, where they feel, you're at, and yeah, just have an opening ceremony, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. And I would say also if somebody have a question to Gabriel while he's talking, I would say you just use a button for raising your hand, the reaction button, so we can better coordinate it. Yeah. Okay, then Gabriel, you may want to start.
Absolutely. So
Mm.
I think the most personal thing I can do is introduce a bit about myself and my story in this process. I I want to bring it to how I discovered the law of one, why I fell in love with the material, and maybe if anybody has any questions at that point, I'll be happy to answer it. But after that, I would like to go into how I see the material and see also how you guys relate to that, because that's how I will be talking about the material. So I, to be full, upfront, honest, my whole life I was an atheist. I think there's a lot of people like me that got into this material the same way, meaning that I didn't believe in anything. My whole life, I thought that spirituality was just something made up in our own subjective minds, and that um, it was a control system and so on. I was a rebel, so to speak. So I just didn't care about anything related to it. Little did I know that I was actually subscribed to a religion, which now we call scientism, which is the belief that everything is made out of particles, and these particles, or what we call matter, is what creates the universe, and we are just a simple byproduct of it. So this, which we call ourselves, is a byproduct of random mutation and collisions and just dumb movements, as opposed to intelligent infinity, right? So that was my belief. And like I said, unknowingly, I was into this religious belief that matter was the fundamental essence of reality. But I think I felt a call in 2018 without even knowing it. This was in the midst of a huge shift that was happening in the corporation where I was working on a pharmaceutical plant. Um, I just didn't feel like working there anymore, and I had spent more than a decade there. So I just stopped having an interest in my career and what I was doing. At the time, I said, I'll just stop this and become what I like to do, which is, my hobby at the time was bodybuilding, mostly nutrition and training. I was a coach in those areas, but I was also, as a hobby, doing bodybuilding. So I wanted to dedicate myself to that, to just helping people, achieve their goals. And even if that was a step down from, working in a lab, earning just enough, cutting down my salary in half, and just doing what I love. So that was sort of what marked 2018 for me. I ended my career in the pharmaceutical plant. But that, I guess, opened my mind to just be more free and more relaxed. I wasn't working. I was looking for certifications and a new career and so on. So one experience led to the other. Eventually, I found myself interested in this whole, actually online. It was my wife who was interested at the beginning in this path of psychedelics and ceremonies and stuff. And I was just not feeling it. I still had my old skeptic mind about all of this. I thought that was all subjective experiences that people had and so on. So yeah, she was the one that introduced me to this and kind of seduced me into getting into doing one of these ceremonies. So eventually, even against my own desires at the moment, I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it together. At that point, I I kind of did some research, me being me, of course, and I wanted to know, okay, what am I supposed to expect here? What's going to happen in one of these ceremonies? So, of course, my mind got filled with information, and you're going to see this, and you might get contact with that, and you're going to all kinds of promises. Well, it so happens that nothing happened during that ceremony to me. For her, it was a nice experience and everything, and some synchronicities happened that night that made me question a couple of things, but my mind kind of collapsed again into, no, let's go back to being skeptic. And I would say that nothing experientially happened that day, but I guess behind the scenes, something started unfolding, which was the series of synchronicities in my life that led me to question reality the way I understood what was happening. And yeah, that followed like a week of constant synchronicities that uh, just made that opening for me to say, okay, there's something definitely beyond this this reality, the structure of reality as I see it. And that little opening led me to say, I'm going to investigate into this. So that's what started my first year in this seeking and this investigation of reality. Scientist as I was, I wanted to know what was consciousness. Like that was the link in, the mind and matter uh, bridge. There was a missing link there between mind and matter. And I got interested in that. That led me to, getting into Buddhism initially. And somebody presented to me in the first couple of months this book. I remember asking him, guide me because this is all new for me. There's so much information there. I don't even know where to start. Documentaries, channels like Gaia saying all kinds of things, videos on YouTube and so on. So give me a book, one book that you tell me, read this and you'll be fine. You'll have a great start. And he suggested The Law of One. And I said, great, let me take a look at it. I grabbed it, I opened it, I saw it was channel information. I closed it, I left it on the side. I said, I don't have time for this. This is channel information. I don't even know what that is. So sure enough, for like 6 months, it stood in, actually it was a PDF that I had on my phone and it just stood there. A few people know actually that I don't think I've ever told the story. I was called in October of or September. I think it was the end of summer in 2019 for jury duty. For those of you who don't know what jury duty is in the US, you're called to serve as jury if, for a case, it's all random. And it's one of the longest, most boring things that you have to wait outside. And uh, I was in this process. I had to go several times a week. So I just sat there and I said, let me take a look at this book that I just sort of shelved there at some point. And I started reading it and I went straight into session one. I didn't read the intro because that's what kind of put me off at the beginning. And as soon as I started reading the language of Ra, there was a connection, right, which I think everybody here can relate to. And this connection was to some truth. There was some truth in the way the language was spoken, the things that were being said. And I wasn't idle these past 6 months. I was still, learning, studying, watching things, and so on. So that's what got me into the Law of One. In essence, 5 years ago, almost, I started reading the Law of One. That was the way uh, I got attracted to it. And I had already begun this random surfing around the internet and channels and books about all kinds of things relating reality. But this is what kind of got all of it together and got rid of so much unnecessary stuff and just focused me on this. But at the same time, I was already, like I said, very interested in Buddhism and their straightforward practice, especially Zen Buddhism. And I started to see the parallels there. Not only did it start shaving all the, what I would say, unnecessary, contradictory information that was out there, but also it was very consistent with the view in non-duality in general. So I began my study of the Law of One in October 2019. And it was actually through conversation with my wife at some point in which we um, she was studying a course in miracles, which I didn't resonate with at the beginning. And I was studying the Law of One. So we were both kind of exchanging information about this. And it's beautiful, all the parallels there. And because I had to explain so many things to her in terms of the language in the Law of One, I felt that there was a sort of need of this, especially in the Spanish community where there was no information whatsoever in terms of the Law of One. I think there were some translated audiobooks, but they don't tell you anything. Like I just wanted to express my feelings about it. So that's when in 2020, amidst the pandemic in April, I decided to start this series of the Law of One, which is the one that is ending soon because I started with session one and covering session by session, one, two, three, even four parts for each session. And yeah, I've been having a lot of fun since then, and I've learned a lot. So that pushed me to study even deeper and deeper. I got into the translations, as Vasilis and I were talking, the translations of the raw content, because the books were already translated into Spanish, but they were translated as the original books. The raw content, as it stands, is a better resource of study, I should say. And I initially had this project for Toby Wheelock, who I enjoy his website a lot. I gotta confess, I use his website, not LNL Research, because I got used to it a while ago. So I got in touch with him, and that's how we started the translation project. I talked to Gary, that's when I met them, and they also wanted the translations, of course. So that got me even more involved. And like Vasilis and other translators would know, we kind of started this material in two languages now. And there's a beautiful connection you start making when you look at the words in one language and then the other and try to make up what they're saying. You get even deeper in the message. So I have been fortunate to have been involved in these projects. And yeah, I gotta confess that I was scared at some point when I was reading the raw material and interpreting it, because there were many things that I said, I'm not sure how I'm going to cover this. This is so deep, so profound, but I just trusted myself or trusted what was happening. And yeah, I was able to make it up to the end now. And I have to say at this point that I don't feel like I know uh, the raw material fully. I don't think I would ever be able to. But what has grown over time is just an appreciation and a love for what is being said there, and of course the practical aspect of all of this for ourselves. So I could probably expand a little bit more on each one of these points, but that's the end of my first part introduction. So again, I don't know if anybody wants to comment or question anything, or not question, but ask any questions. And yeah, if not, I have other stuff that I want to share.
I have a question. I would like to know how long it took you in the first place to read the material.
the first time reading the material?
Yes.
Huh. This is another thing that people don't know. I never finished the Law of One before I started. Like in April when I started the series, I think I was up to session 80 something. I just felt very confident that those sessions I was able to easily talk about and not be lost. So that's the fear that I talked about at the beginning of saying I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover everything, especially the archetypical mind, which I think we're going to talk about the Empress today, which is awesome. I got into the archetypical mind later on. So when I started doing the material or the series, I started, I hadn't finished the books actually. So I guess I just continued to read them. And I would even say that I don't think I read session 105 or 6 yet because I stopped there when I heard that it was just personal material. And I said, no, I'm interested in, all the other information. So I think I still haven't finished reading the raw material, not as a study.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question for Gabriel so far? So then
I'll go to
I
part
would.
two. Hmm? You can say something, Daniel?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, with everything that I said, I have to also say, as you probably know, I have a strong bias in how I interpret the law of one or how I see and live the law of one, the way how things collide together for me in the law of one. And this has to do with the realization of oneness, which I believe, and even this I leave to interpretation for everybody, but I believe that the core message of the law of one is for us to realize the reality of things, the truth behind everything, which is loosely translated as oneness or non-duality. There is not two things out there. The most profound understanding, the deepest truth is that there is only one thing, one being, and that is what we call me, I, myself, the self, the creator. That is to me the most profound message in the law of one. So, based on this view, which is my worldview, and which goes directly into practice, I believe that this is the most important material, or let's put it this way. The law of one is a source of information. As far as we know, the raw material, or like anything else, is a source of information. That information speaks of something. What does it inform us about? That information, I feel, that is concentrated on conveying the message of oneness. And how do we interpret that? So for me, that's why I have as a first point, I feel that the most important thing, and I'm going to talk about how I see in general categorize the law of one, how I see it in a structured way, I would say hierarchical from my point of view. And it starts with what I call the mystical essence of the law of one. There is an essence to the law of one as Ra describes it. And that essence is the one that I've been saying, oneness. We call it mystical because it's a mystery. That's where the word mystic derives its meaning from, the great mystery. What is the greatest mystery? We can say the creator, but if I am the creator, then I am the deepest mystery. You see, so embedded in the law of one, there are so many hints and messages. And this is because Ra represents an entity. We know sixth density to be the density of unity, the density of no polarities, where the paradoxes are resolved. And so there are so many parallels here in terms of how this understanding and the way the information of sixth density is distilled down to our human brains, that information must contain the message of unity, regardless of what is being said. The message or the direction, the angle in which the information is expressed is unity, meaning that we cannot listen to or read anything that is being said there that is disconnected from this direction, which we call the positive path. And that's why we can, in certain Q&As, we can see more of this. You can even say that it's more raw, R-A-W, no, R-A. The information is more raw in that sense, that is directed towards unity and the feeling of unity. And so you will find this across the material in things like the disciplines of personality, indigo ray activation, for example, enlightenment, which there are a couple of quotes here and there, and the life of the adept, which is the process in which everybody who is going through this polarization process is experiencing. So to me, that's the core, that's the main teaching, the main message. Ra said that there are humble messengers of the law of one. So their words, everything that they describe is a message coming from the law of one. Law of one, in essence, is saying everything is one, which my desire and my devotion is to bring out of the intellect and into the heart this understanding of unity and how do we live it. So I would say this is the most important point, or the first part of the structure in how I see the law of one. And I would always bring it there. In essence, everything that I talk about the law of one, or anything even outside the law of one, depending on the aperture of the individual, I would try to bring it there, because I think that's the most desirable thing in our paths. Second point is another, say, category in which we find information in the law of one. It's very close to this mystical essence and this realization of oneness, but it's a little bit more on the learning side, or the learned teaching and the understanding from an intellectual level. We're departing the transcendent unity, the feeling of oneness that is indescribable, to a little bit more of an intellectual approach. And those is what I call dynamics and processes of the mind. The mind is the way in which we decode reality. When I say we, the pronoun we, I, you, I'm referring to the oneness, or the one consciousness, the one awareness that is the creator. The cosmic mind, in essence, has some dynamics and processes, and that's the way it decodes reality, or it plays the game of hide and seek, in essence, because that's what it's doing. It's veiling itself. And so in this material, we will find things like archetypical mind, which we are going to get into today. Energy centers is another one that is part of this dynamics and processes of the mind. And believe it or not, healing is also part of this process, because it has to do with the functionings of the mind and its tangles and the way it processes reality in clear or obscured way. So to me, this is the second point that is, I would say, the second most interesting thing in the law of one to me. And these are, again, the dynamics and processes of the mind. I'm talking about the cosmic mind, which, again, in the beautiful model of the law of one, we see a tree of mind, from the roots, touching intelligent infinity, all the way into the conscious mind. So that to me is the second most interesting and important part of the material. And yeah, it's where we spend a lot of time reflecting and talking about how this can be understood, so it can help us and aid us in point number one, which is living this sense of unity. That's really what transforms our lives in the end. The third point that I have is I like to call it structure or the model of reality, which is one of the things that we also get very in love with the material. It shows us a model of reality that is it's very consistent with what we know, not only in spiritual traditions, but also in science. That's the beauty of it. You know, it doesn't create some bizarre or strange new universe for us. It's exactly what we're living. So we can relate to it. And so this structure or model of reality is what I find the third most important point, and which kind of uh, takes in together so many concepts like the cosmology. Just the cosmology in general in the law of one is huge. We go from the infinite to the recurrent heartbeat of creation. So that alone to me is just very ambitious, and it's also in a very humble way in which they say, or rather describes that they don't know everything. They barely know up to sixth density. There are many things that are beyond their understanding. So cosmology in general is to me uh, in this third category, because now we're studying the way in which, let's say, intelligent energy moves. Yeah. So the way in which reality is, you know, taking shape and dissolving into oneness and taking shape again in form and doing all these things. So we get into densities of consciousness, for example, which one of those beautiful things I think I discovered at the beginning when reading the material, that there was this structure in which we go and we can snap in here evolution and everything else. There's also, for example, the two polarities, positive and negative, the two paths. So that's also here in part of the structure of how we live, how we engage in this reality. Of course, time and space are here in both space-time and time-space, the two sides of the same coin. But time and space are the dimensions in which, of course, the mind can experience itself, mind and body. And things like the veil of forgetting is another one that, to me, is part of this. Even though the veil of forgetting is also part of the dynamics and processes of the mind, but I also see it as part of the structure. Again, don't take any of what I'm saying here as exclusively part of this model or this category. And
Gabriel,
finally, yes,
Tatiana, I have a question.
yes.
Hey everyone. Hey Andy. Hey Angelica. Yeah, and hey Gabriel. We are super happy that you are here. Thank you so much for joining us. And things like it's I'm just like laughing inside during the whole time you were talking about like everything and just touching the point about duality, because actually today we have the Empress, and the Empress is about duality, like to like growing and to embrace all these values and all these beautiful things we are experiencing here on earth, the both parts, like the and also the like duality in the like the polarities and the experience. In order to give something you need to surrender to something, like it's just a transition, and it's part of this abundance we somehow are experienced here on earth as mind-body complexes. So I find super interesting like what you are saying at the moment about duality, because exactly with the Empress, which is again like the catalyst in the tarot, in the major arcana we are going again to talk about today, is see it as something natural when you are here on planet Earth, being a human, like being a human body. It is something that is going to be in your life, and you can either again choose between going somehow doing good stuff or bad stuff, call it as you want to call it, but bad can also be good. And like this is like this yin and yang, it's just the balance between those two elements. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, and maybe we can just start to go into the topic, if you don't mind, the other ones, like about your how you see the Empress in your duality model.
Oh, I don't have a duality model. What do you mean by duality model?
I mean, like, like just the direct path, like, is that there is no duality, like you just express and think like earth. I mean, maybe I'm sure in words and you can explain that more. But I think it's like exactly that, like to embrace this beautiful moment we are enjoying in on air in order to transcend, to go further in this evolution process. And yeah, that exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got it. So we need to talk about the veil of forgetting first, which is really what brought about the archetype of catalyst and experience, which is, we're talking about catalyst with the Empress. By the way, disclaimer, I am really bad with interpreting the images of the tarot. I am not one for symbols. That's just my downside. I look at the cards, and to me, I don't know, I just don't make sense of symbols. So I won't be able to aid much on that. Plus, I see, and you can see this throughout the material, that you can interpret this in many ways. Symbols are made to be interpreted, and there is no, it's not that there is no right or wrong with symbolic representation, but the essence of what the card means or what the archetype is, what I try to grasp as much as possible. So that's where I can very primitively aid in this and what this means in our lives. So thank you, Tad, for that question, because I'll bring it to our mundane life, to our daily experience. But just to give, I guess, my take on this, when we talk about the catalyst of mind, we have to talk about the veil of forgetting. The veil of forgetting is something that is in place in our reality, or in the way awareness is experiencing reality. In other words, before any thought, there is always awareness. Awareness is undeniable. Awareness is the primal essence of reality. I mentioned that I used to believe that matter was the essence of reality. Like Planck said over 100 years ago, matter is derivative of consciousness or awareness. So awareness veils itself. This is not yet the veil of forgetting, but it veils itself to know itself. Otherwise, there would be no knowledge of self. There would be just infinity. And so the veil is the original veil. That's just simple, and I probably shouldn't even call it veiling, but it's the word that I use the most. This is not yet the veil of third density. This is just the initial veiling of awareness. Brock calls it infinity becomes aware, and this becomes intelligent infinity. See, it wants to experience itself. So that's the initial step. That's the initial veil. But down the line in the cosmology that they explain, they say that there was introduced to experience this veil of forgetting, which is in third density. At this point is where we create the archetypes, and this is excluding a lot of information that goes around this. But for our planet, we can say that the veil of forgetting is in place, of course, and we have now four added archetypes for mind, body, and spirit. Those four added archetypes are catalyst, experience, transformation, and the great way. We're talking about catalyst here. Well, you see, when we veil ourselves, what are we veiling? We're veiling our nature, who we are. So the veil is, in essence, obscuring, hiding, disguising our interconnectedness. We don't see that. Through our conscious minds, we don't see that. So that's why Ra says the veil was introduced between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, matrix and potentiator. As we draw this veil, then the conscious mind has no clear access to the unconscious mind. it needs to seek for it. And this seeking, this reaching out to the unconscious mind is what causes catalyst. So because of the veil, there is reaching of the conscious mind that is questioning, what is this? What am I doing? How do I find love? How do I find happiness? And so it reaches out into the unconscious mind, a resource of the mind, the deepest resources. And by doing this, it produces catalyst. So through the veil, it seems to come out catalyst. This catalyst is supposed to offer us experience. What is the purpose of the archetypical mind? To generate polarity, or to produce, to accelerate the process of evolution through polarity. So catalyst is neutral. Catalyst just comes up, and the conscious mind is the one that says, ah, this is what it means. And now there are two meanings and one recycling from my point of view. There's a meaning of positive, unity, cooperation, or there is a meaning of negative, separation, competition, control, and so on. So we use catalyst, which is going to produce experience and create this polarization in us. That polarization, of course, is what we choose. That's our choice. So catalyst per se is that which we are experiencing daily, because our conscious mind is reaching constantly to the unconscious and producing this experience that we call life. And so as we get into our own daily routine, we're experiencing catalysts all the time. In terms of what you said, Tad, in duality, that's truly the duality that I see in the most important duality that I see in the archetypical mind is, of course, the polarity of the positive or the negative polarity. How do we polarize ourselves? And it has to do with how we perceive catalyst, how we continue to perceive catalyst. Now, it's interesting because a lot of us actually, we see that we have patterns that repeat over and over. And so that's because catalyst, it's repeating itself. We haven't processed catalyst properly, and we need to pick one side. That's the third, I would say, option that we have, which is recycling catalyst over and over. The vast majority of us, as Ross says, do not process catalyst fully efficiently, leaving catalyst to repeat itself and yet make some use out of it. But at the same time, people who are totally unconscious of the spiritual path, or who resist, I wouldn't even say that they're unconscious. They resist a lot their lives. They're recycling catalysts over and over, and that's where we see suffering. Does that go with what you were saying, Tat?
No, not really. Because what I understood about the catalyst in the mind, in the body part, in the mind part, was not that it's going to show again and again and again. It's just like, you don't have this veil because you have there, with this card, the opportunity actually to choose, like it's just to choose exactly what you want, choose exactly what you want to be, to have, to be, and embrace this, and embrace all this potential you have to do. No, you have to do, you can do with it, like, and it doesn't, like, really here, what I understood is, like, it really doesn't matter if you just want to do something that maybe you will not understand from the beginning, but at the end, because exactly of the Empress, like, it's just about giving everything, and it's just about this unconditional love, like, of course, it comes in the positive way, it doesn't matter what it comes after it. I just experienced, and I'm grateful because it happened. But of course, and the opposite of this is, like, when you start just to do things, and this is because I'm talking about duality of this card. You have both sides, unconditional love, and you start to really accept and do and go through the process. Maybe it can be hard and harsh, and sometimes you will not understand it, but at the end you see the fruit of it, like, okay, it was there because of something, and it's totally fine to experience. But on the other hand, you had this denial somehow, like I will do it in order to receive something, and that's my paycheck, so, to say that in a way. And you just start to limit each action, and because you don't want to feel pain, and because you want maybe to be the best, there's like this supporting the ego, the I'm the one who experienced, the one who is going to save the world, I'm the one who is going to teach, and this, and I. And it's also totally fine, because at the end you are just experienced. And then if you, I don't know, if you die or if you leave this body, because we actually are here in the moment. You have the dead, in the moment, like you are going to be bored. You also have in mind that you are going to death, you are going to die. You have these two things, and those are like this, what I was trying just to figure out, like in the non-duality, because somehow you are being in the middle of this, like to go forward, maybe to the fourth density, since the model works like that, like you need this not duality, but you need to experience the duality of both sides, the one who helped me with going through a situation, and the one to deny a situation. So yeah, it's just the way I understand it. And yeah, like maybe we can talk about a little bit more. I don't know, another participant maybe want to add something, have some questions.
Yeah, but I totally agree with what you said. That's, in essence, I think we both agree. Yeah. Because you're talking about, the positive, positive way to experience catalyst and the negative way of experiencing catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah, and in my mind, somehow the negative path is also normalized, or part of the non-duality. So oneness has both ways of experiencing itself. And I myself, for example, even a totally a negative person on the negative path will have 5% of positive polarity, so towards others and acceptance of others, and for us for people on the positive path, there's so much room for service to self, servicing the self as a way of knowing ourselves. So I'm in line with Tat, that both are very beneficial to experience. And for me, I see that, for example, behaviors that are service to self, both from others and myself, have a great value. So a catalyst which I feel is controlling, and either comes from another person or it comes from within, from inside of myself, is actually a lot of value. And yeah, just sharing that. Yeah, and trying to be in non-duality, or thinking like although unity thinking and sixth density thinking is the substrate, of the way I see things. Being interdensity, being veiled, is actually I'm always pushed in one direction or the other, and choosing all the time. So I also have this notion that if I was to be like a Zen Buddhist monk, that I would not do anything. I would just stay still, or avoid any even connecting with others, even being with others, and enjoying the love, the connection, and all this. So it's yeah. So thinking non-duality actually makes me freeze a little bit in a way. Just, yeah.
Thank you, Vasilis. Andy, you have a question?
Hi, welcome, Gabriel. Lovely
Thank you,
to
Andy.
meet you and have you here. I've been watching your videos. So, yeah, so my 2 cents worth about duality. I've just posted a picture of the structure of an atom. And this is an analogy for how I interpret it, because I tend to do like the as above, so below, as within, so without. And the physical for me is like a metaphor for the spiritual and the mental. So if we think about like, you know, there's like positive and negative charges, protons, electrons, neutrons, and then there's the space within which all things occur. And Tati, you're probably sick of me telling with this analogy, but like we are the object space, but we're also the space. So so my analogy is like, let's imagine if we are all boxes, and within these boxes that we are, there's like balls or objects bouncing off each other, you know, but so we're both the space and the objects within the box. But then if you think about it again, and imagine if the box was made of like chicken wire or netting, that space is also part of the space that's outside the box. And if we're aware of that space and not just the objects, then then we'll realize that actually that space is infinite, and that infinity we're part of as well, you know. So there's that. So in terms of oneness, there's that, for me, is how I remind myself that I am space, that I am, that is between the objects as well. And then if we kind of expand that, you know, it's like, well, atoms come together to form like bigger objects. And, you know, if we think of ourselves as individual atoms, and then the social memory complex as like, you know, all these atoms coming together to form a bigger object, but then we've also got catalysts. And yeah, anyway, maybe you get the idea. I don't know. I'm talking out my ass again. But oh, you're recording this. Sorry, I'll shut up.
All is fine, Andy. Gabriel would like to comment something on the statements I've given.
Yeah, so if I can offer or suggest a simple way to understand this, what we speak about non-duality is that it's an understanding rather than, you know, a model, or we can derive a model out of it if we want to. We can delineate concepts out of it if we want to. We can create structures. We can create all kinds of things out of it. And that's the reason why we have different traditions around the world. Non-duality does not belong to a specific part of the world, a culture, or a tradition. It is the most fundamental understanding of reality. We can only achieve this by direct experience. And it's not even an achievement, it's a recognition. So if I could suggest an understanding into non-duality is that there is only one thing, and that is awareness. Awareness experiences itself, and to experience itself, it moves. So when we look deep inside ourselves, like Andy was saying, there is this space, this stillness in which, that's what fundamentally is. There is no objective self, meaning that there is no form, there's no delineated God or subject, or we just know this as awareness. That's it. We can all agree with this. I would dare anybody to raise their hands to say if they're not aware. Awareness is the most basic thing, and we simply obviate this in favor of trying to understand ourselves in objective reality. So if we start there, we look at that, and then we look at our experience. Our experience is just simply a movement, a shift. It's an activity. These are the two undeniable things of reality. I myself and experience. I experience reality. The thing is that there is no separation here. There is no separation between me and experience. It's one thing, like Andy was suggesting too. So all of this is contained within myself. It is appearing and disappearing. This flow of things is happening within me, not outside. There is no outside. All I know is myself. And it's actually not made out of something different than me, as if I were the space and something called energy, matter, light is flowing through me. It's made out of me as well. So there is no separation. However, we do perceive movement in terms of separation. It seems like it's separated. There seems to be space and there seems to be time. But these two in actuality do not exist. The only thing that exists is self, or awareness, or creator. You see? So if we go deep into our experience, and this maybe answers your question, Tad, we can corroborate this. We don't need any models. We don't need any concepts or no thoughts. Just pure experience. You've never experienced space. You have never experienced time. And everything that we have experienced as space, time, and just experience or activity in general, it's a modulation of this one awareness. So again, everything that I have said, I've done it through language and some concepts that you may or may not agree. And that's the flaw of trying to talk about this, you see, because in the end, we can only experience it. And that's why I've prefaced this with saying that we can only understand this through direct experience. So everything that we talk about non-duality must have this, at least this direction of inquiry within ourselves. And that's how I would frame non-duality in its most basic conceptual form. But yeah, that's from there we can see everything else. If we have this solid foundation, then we can begin to understand, what is happening. For example, when we're talking about the catalyst, well, catalyst for what? Catalyst for evolution. What is evolution? But the understanding that we are this one thing. Simple. Everything is moving to the realization of oneness. As Vasilis was saying, there's a positive side and a negative side, or a positive path and a negative path. If we follow them, eventually we'll get to the same place. So Catalyst is feeding this at all times to accelerate this process. Now, yeah.
Gabriel, Andy have a question to what did you just say? Andy, you want to ask a question by yourself?
Yeah, like I find it easier to understand oneness than to understand the duality. I mean, when someone says non-duality, what is the duo? What are the two things that make up the duo? Is it like, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The first and last separation. In fact, Ross says it. I don't remember the quote. I could probably look it up. But they say, what is the first separation? Does anybody remember that? The first separation is, yeah, which one is it, Daniel?
The self from the self, right?
That's correct. How can that happen if not subject to object? So when I separate from myself, I look at myself as a subject of experience in a world made out of objects. You see? I mean, once I do that, I can begin to see a multiplicity, you know, this interconnectedness, intra network of jewels, right? So the first separation needs to happen. That's the first duality. I, myself, and the world. And now we see the multiplicity and diversity of things that we call objects. And from there, we can describe so many dualities.
Isn't it a funny game? I find it quite funny that, I mean, the one thing separates itself in like seemingly two things, object and subject, and then place this notion, which is totally, I don't know, absurd. And in order to find or experience itself in new ways, all the more new ways, because I'm thinking that the veil is a recent or a newer invention, let's say, or thought as an experiment to yet again in a new way the creator learn about itself. So yeah, although it's so in some way crazy, I would say, to separate the self from the self. Actually, it's in all ways, in every way, it's a way to understand the one thing, to understand itself, or to experience itself. I don't see any other way.
Yeah. Yeah, so it stands to reason because, for example, let's do math, Vasilis. Let's do math, which is infinity. What's infinity plus infinity?
Yeah. Infinite, of course.
Where's the fun in there? You know, it makes no sense. I have to break down infinity into numbers for us to have the playful activity that we call math. You see? So that's what reality does. Reality being infinite, it just breaks down itself into this holographic display of itself. There cannot be two different infinities. That makes no sense. Although mathematicians would love to do that and say, yes, there are different types of infinity, but it's not true. Conceptually, there's just one infinite, you know, universe, being, thing that we call reality. Reality is infinite. So, and even in our experience, we can get in touch with this. Now, notice, and this is what's striking to me as a seeker. How much time do we dedicate to objective reality every day? And how much time do we dedicate to this one infinite being? Again, I'm talking about the direct experience of nothingness, what the mind perceives as nothing, which is, as Ross says, there is no nothingness. There is unity. So how much time do we spend, you know, and this is not an act, you know, admonishing you or anything. It's just how fascinated are we with objective reality? That's what brings us so it makes our essence so so alien to us. You know, this concept of infinity. It's not. It's our fundamental being, and whatever we look, we're going to find it, because we cannot escape from it. This is another point into saying that we've never been separated. A lot of people in the spiritual community, they like to emphasize that we are here separated from the one. Fine, you know, that's a way to speak. That's a poetic language. That's a way in which to talk about us as a character. That's fine, but ultimately it's not true. So why would we base our lives on that when we can go deeper into the truth and live from there? And I know you mentioned, you know, this inactivity that is. I feel there's a misconception in inactivity as, you know, just not doing anything. But what we call inactivity is actually the most profound service that we can do, which is the non-resisting. You know, it's the non-interfering with what's happening, because the only way that we can interfere with what's happening is with the image of ourselves interposing itself between the flow of life and what it seems to want. So, you know, this fades away. This interference fades away over time as we begin to live more from our true self, which is this stillness. This stillness is not true inactivity. It's bursting with desires to do things. In fact, our whole lives we have been doing it. We just, you know, a lot of it we have been unconscious, and this image, which we call the ego, has been, you know, interfering with it and saying, you know, that's not true. You know, we shouldn't do this. That was not well done, and so on. So, in essence, maybe to answer a little bit the question that Andy had as well, what does non-duality mean? To me, is the constant abiding in the true self of, you know, who you are. And why would we try to do something else once we know that we are what we are? So how do we continue to discern that which we are from what we're not? So to me, non-duality is an invitation for us to first dive into the self-investigation that is suggested by all mystics around the world and history. Dive personally into this. I said dive, but die also works here. Merge with this and allow this understanding to live through us, as opposed to us trying to take something out of it, which is what the image of ourselves would have us do.
Vasilis, have a question? Go ahead, Vasilis.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether there is progression or there isn't. I mean, if I am right now at the state of non-needing, let's say, or no reason for progression, or if there is progression, because if there is, then it's a totally different game. So yeah, this is my question. I mean, is there progression
in which scenario? In which scenario?
Right now, in this, I am, let's say, or I think I am in the third density or third, fourth. So, is there actually a progression, or is it the underlying? Yeah, that's my question.
So I just want to make sure that I get your point right. When you mean progression, you mean if there is a progression in the evolution of things? You mean as an individual, as collective? What precisely do you mean?
So if I am of the essence of one, which I recognize, is there something that um, um, uh, is there something to be done to do, or is there something to not do? Since I am already what I should be, I'm awareness. I am the one, or
Yeah.
in a way. So so doing actually has doesn't have any value. So if
Okay.
I'm not doing, then I'm not progressing. Then
Right.
there's some kind of meaninglessness in not progression. That's my
Yeah. Yeah.
or is there because I understand that as a human I'm a meaning making machine in a way. So my brain is creating meaning all the time. So,
Yeah.
but is there actually any meaning? Yeah. In
Yeah.
terms of does
Hola,
my
mi amor. Ay, perdón.
that we can hear you.
Sorry, I was sorry. Continue, please.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if this is yeah,
It's a
I'm
really,
still
yes, no, it's a really good question, and you phrased it properly. Thank you, Vasilis. So you're talking about the realization of oneness, and from there, if there is some meaning to this, when we do this investigation, into the true nature of ourselves, there are two phases here, because we initially begin this investigation from the idea, very strong, convincing idea, that I am something. I am this body, this mind, and as a body mind, I suffer, and I have questions, and I don't understand myself. So the first phase is to investigate this body mind and really find out what is it made of. Yeah. When we do this, we're investigating ourselves. And so if we direct this to what we call I, or myself, this is where we get into the realization of oneness. We're going to find there are sensations, perceptions, thoughts, images, feelings, and so on. This is all what makes up me. However, I am the one who perceives all this. In other words, there is an awareness of this, and I am aware of this. In fact, I am aware that I am aware. So structurally or hierarchically, I can go back to awareness, but not beyond. Awareness is the primordial, let's say, essence of what's happening. This is part of the first phase of investigation. And so we abide in this awareness, and we say, I am awareness. Awareness is everything, and I am this. And so it so happens that everything else is. This is where we get into this feeling of oneness and understanding that what we essentially are is, this field that contains everything. But then there is a second phase in which you come out of this knowledge, and now you're merging with reality and say, if this is who I am, then what are the implications to my beliefs? And how do I decondition the mind? And this is where your answer lies, that it is not that you don't get stuck in observation or in awareness, because that's not fully who you are. You are both awareness and what is aware of. So what you are aware of is yourself too. And you will find personally, individually, all of us, we have a certain tendency to share, to do things, to what we call service to others. That is a natural, not preconceived desire of the self. You see, so one of the things is that we break down desire into two things: personal desire and impersonal desire. A personal desire is characterized by the needing of something out in the world. I need to satisfy myself. It begins with the feeling of scarcity, of limitation. You see, I am a limited, finite being, and so I need things. That's a personal desire. That is what we say, no more doing of this, because that does not yield any positive results at all. Never, ever. It's created by an image that we're not. So all of this is when in non-duality they say, no more doing. There is nobody, there's no image. I'm not that image, right? So that goes away. All those personal desires will have to go away because they're never conducive to happiness, never. However, the impersonal desires, which is something that we cannot deny, we cannot withhold this. We cannot suppress this. It's a natural thing that we want to do. That doing, that's our service. It's a natural thing. We don't have to think about it. It's already there. So this unfolds result of taking away this image, which again cannot be taken away unless we stand in our true self. That's why I mentioned the disciplines of the personality. Rob puts it so easy. Know yourself, first step. Accept yourself, second step. That accept yourself is both removing the image and allowing the individual personality to flourish, to bloom, to blossom, which the separate self has been trying to suppress. That's the other energy. That's the negative energy. And what is the result? Becoming the creator. The creator is not preconceived. It doesn't know what it wants. It just wants to do things. And so we find ourselves in spontaneity, which is, what is encouraged in all mystical paths. Be yourself. We hear it all the time. It sounds like a cliche already. So
are you saying then, or like, I'm just thinking about these two polarities, like, because if we are here veiled and let's say that I'm a negative service to the self, and which I really enjoy doing, harming people, or like doing these activities that actually just make me joyful and powerful, is also if I'm veiled, but I'm just feel this joyfulness just doing something like harms others, is also experience myself, is a valid point to experience myself, like just indeed going, I don't know if that also is awareness, like aware that I'm doing something that it harm others, or it doesn't seem like I'm harming others because I actually enjoying what I'm doing.
if it's a valid way to experience the self, is your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see it all the time. I've hurt other people. I don't know if you guys have hurt other people. I have. So I know that is a way to experience myself. That's experience. The thing is that in the current state in which we experience reality, we have to pick. We have to pick which one do we want the best. Not only harming other people, that's not enough for negative polarization. You have to go even more ruthless, which is just, yeah. I mean, I spoke about the image of the self, right? That image that we think we are. First of all, there is only one thing. Yes, there's only one thing happening. If you have no thoughts, you would see that there is only one thing. You wouldn't even perceive body, mind, nothing. It would just be one thing. Babies do this. Babies have just one experience. They don't know I'm a subject and I'm a baby and it's time to go to. They have no conception of anything. So that's the primordial state of the mind. Now, when we begin to experience reality, right, we see a flowing of things. And so we label me and world. Because of this me, I create an image of myself, which is based on prior experience, right? And I can even project myself to be something in the future, a future that doesn't exist and will never arrive, but yet we still feel, that there is this future. And so we start projecting ourselves as an image, and we want to preserve that image. in ignorance that we are that which has ever been and always will be. That image can only exist by controlling and manipulating first the self. That's the first object that it controls and manipulates. What are the first thing that goes out in a negative individual? Emotions, reactivity to emotions. So it completely divorces itself from that. So it becomes natural to just manipulate and control others. So that's a valid way to experience the self to a degree. What we are doing is potentiating this image of ourselves as a separate being. And the delusion is so powerful that, as Ra explains, we can advance to a certain degree in the structure of reality, which is early sixth density. Until that point, and I just like to caricaturize it as when I become a negative being, right? I just want to control my family. It's the first thing I want to control, right? I control my family. I make sure I derive all the wealth for me and whatnot. Then it's not enough, and I want to go to the town, maybe the state, and so on. I mean, I control the planets. Planets not enough. When I die, you know, I have polarized enough myself to control other planets, and this whole, you know, metaphysical battle between confederations and so on of control, blah blah blah. The more I advance in terms of power, the more I want to control the universe. When I get to sixth density, I say I want to control and be the whole universe. And at that point, I say, wait a minute, for that I need to become everything that there is. Oh, that's simple. I just switch polarities. I negate all polarities and I become the creator. I wake up from my dream of becoming the emperor of the universe. So this is how we delude ourselves into an image. And it starts here, of course, in third density. It's not necessary. We can always realize from the beginning, I am the one. And this is just a flowing of the one. I am not even a separate being. I'm not a separate being, positive thing experiencing. I am the one being. And so there is no need to preserve anything or control anything for that matter. You're living with the intelligence of the universe behind you, basically. Intelligent infinity is your source.
That's you made me think again about that, you know, like once it says, I don't know, like, because I can't remember how many times I have been dying, or like it just made me think about the moment you just leave the Audi you have chosen for this experience and then go again unveil in the eternity or in the infinite or in this higher or maybe deeper plane of yourself in this interior, and then you choose again the game, you know, like, and then you start again experience yourself in another level, you know, like it's like a quest. You're like in this like this I just thinking about this saga game, Saga Frontier, like, you know, you have a new role, and then you start you experience again yourself, and maybe then you are the evil one, and then someone kill you, and then you are like, okay, I need another sleep because I wanted to do this and I was not finished, and it continues and continues and continues till you got to the point you said a minute ago, Gabriel. Okay, I think I have been doing everything. I just want to be everything.
I think we also have to think about the plan of our sublogos, our sun. There's a plan here, and there's a plan of progression, let's say, through the densities, which the sun is not a part of. It is designed for us to enjoy. I was thinking that there is progression as the sun has planned it, but also there is no progression actually, because the essence is actually always one thing, the same thing, and awareness. And but myself, I find joy in playing either the hurting game, the separation from the self, from the other self, and also the service to others game is still an enjoyable one. So both ways, I get to enjoy the plan that is created for me, or I take part actually in this time. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, like Ross said, prior to the veil, and I'm paraphrasing and actually adding things, but it's very boring. Pre-veil is very boring. There was no negative polarity. It was after the veil that negative polarity became a possibility, and they say this is quite intense, very vivid experience.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our session. If anyone still have a question, it's time to ask now. Otherwise, I would
Andy.
say I hope. Yeah, Tatiana?
Andy has a question. Andy.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, Gabriel, what's your daily practice involve in terms of applying the law of one?
Thank you for the question. So to me, there's only one practice from which all other practices derive. It's activity or direction of the will, right? Let's call practice direction of the will. That's where our will is going to. And it's one of the fundamental tools of the adept, as Ross says. Faith and will. The one practice is to remember who you are at any moment and be that knowingly. That's different from remembering who you are and then going back to your daily activities, but just remember who you are or what you are and be that knowingly. That is awareness. I am the awareness of this experience. My mind is informed by this awareness. That is my one and only practice. However, I know that with the question also comes, what do? I love sitting in meditation, which I don't even like to call it meditation. Like I said, I have a deep preference for just sitting, which is experiencing what's happening in the moment, and that's it. I think everything else, I mean, contemplation, as Ross suggests, is also part of what we do, but it's the fundamental thing is just remember who you are in the moment and be that knowingly. That's what I simply do.
Answer your question, Andy. Yes.
Yes, thank you. That's
Great.
cool.
Then Vasilis have another question?
I have a question that I'm not sure if I answer this to Tat, but I just read the message. The Tat, when you said that the veil does not exist in the catalyst, was that something that we covered already?
Yeah, because it's exactly the moment you have to experience who you are and what you are. Like, it's exactly the moment it presents the situation to choose, to go either left or right. And for me, because today the topic was the Empress, but we just delve into something different. So yeah, like why I understand it was exactly that, like in this arcana, there is no veil because actually you are both, and you are just going to choose there. Like there's just transparency, just experience is what it counts in, but not to say counts, it's just experience, it's just being aware, and you are the one who is taking the choice and, you know, just saying to the other one, I do it because of you. No, you didn't because of the other one. You did it because you choose. You took the decision. If you want just to say that someone did it for you, or you did it because someone told you, tells you that, you are again then doing a denial of your experience. So yeah.
I would just add to that, to remember that in our experience, the veil is not removable, but permeable, and we can penetrate it. So, and the reason why is that, you know, the veil exists in all of our experiences simply because we cannot understand the nature of catalysts. And we can never understand the roots of all catalysts. So I would suggest that the veil is present in all of our experiences, particularly catalysts, because catalyst is produced after the veil has been, it comes through the veil. Catalyst comes through the veil, you see? So it's not like it's not present. In fact, because of the veil is that we produce catalyst. Otherwise, we would be able to see everything and there wouldn't be any learning, because the process of learning of us is the constant meditation or reflection, if you will, of what's happening. Like you said, you know, something happened and we do see the catalyst. I mean, not because there is no veil, but because catalyst, in fact, there is a quote, I'll probably share it if I can. There's a quote in the raw material where Ra says that when the conscious mind perceives catalyst, much of it has been filtered through the veil. So what we perceive as catalyst is already like a tiny portion of what that means. We don't understand at all the deep structure of the mind, and we don't have to. That's the beauty of it. All we need to do is, like you said, just to choose, you know, how do I react to this? What is the most loving way I can react, or how am I reacting, you know, in a negative way? So yeah, I think I agree with everything you said, just to point out that the veil is not removable. And in fact, that's why we have an experience. Even mystics, so-called enlightened mystics, they are working through the veil.
Yeah.
They may not be fooled, you know, by the veil as much as us, but yet there is not a removal of the veil in third density.
Yeah, I mean, the point is like, I just wanted to mention that it's due to catalyst that we actually experience the true of the experience, you know. And
Yeah,
that before, like, we are recycling catalyst, and that sounds like so funny, though it's the reality. It comes again and it comes again and it comes again, and it's not, you are not even conscious that the moment is happening till maybe the third, fourth time, like you have. But I have actually, I think I did that already. What I think that is so what I think I can do this better, what I think that that happened to me before, is because of it, you know, like, because it presents so hard and so present that there is no way you can then avoid again a choice. You weren't able maybe to do it as it should be, cause, and something you said here, learning, learning, remembering who we are, like, you know, because our experience on air is already marked, it's already there. It's like we programming ourselves to you know, like, just somehow to have fun here.
yeah. That's the emotional work that we do. Just dealing with our emotions. That's a big part of it.
Thank you very much, Tatiana and Gabriel. And I hope we were able to arouse the interest for the study group today. So, and we will start on next week, Thursday, 4th of July, by 7 p.m. So, and I created already the subgroup in the Telegram group for study group. So yeah, there we will find further information in future about the study group. So, Gabriel, any closing words for today?
Yeah, well, thank you for allowing the space and for allowing me to be part of it. And yeah, I'm excited to start this study group when we begin with session 1 this Thursday. I'll make up a synthesis, like I promise, of session 1, and like I said at the beginning, I'll structure it in what I consider to be the most important elements of each session in that structure that I saw, which is, or that I shared with you guys, which was, you know, the mystical essence of the message and dynamics and processes of the mind and the rest. So that's how I'll be structuring the sessions, but they're always open for whatever other questions that may be, you know, rising up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this Thursday, and thank you all. It's nice seeing you all and meeting you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. So we will start on Thursday by 7 p.m., I guess. And hope to see you guys. And